Right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment you've been waiting for. I don't know why I just went into like a circus voice, but for a lot of you, this is the moment that some of you have been waiting for because you see social media as a very powerful tool, and it is. However, I don't want you to get too carried away with social media in itself. I want you to keep in mind that social media is a tool that we use to build our own lists, our own email lists, or contact lists with phone numbers and emails so that we can build a closer relationship with our guests, or not guests, our clients or customers or potential clients and customers on a more intimate basis. But where this often starts is social media. So let's talk about it because that's where people hang out. So going through this, one of the first things that we note with social media is that a lot of people think that all you need to do is just go and post a nice picture. You post a pretty picture and you get likes and you get comments, and that is as difficult as it is. And then from that point, especially if you're trying to use social media for business, if people like it, then maybe they'll inquire and they'll become a customer or a client, and the money just rolls in. But if you've used social media at all, you know that that's not how it works. And if you're watching this video, obviously you've used social media. So let's show you what we figured out from a business standpoint, what we figured out that we need to do in order to leverage social media. And this isn't just my business. This is actually having worked with, well, I'm going to say around 300 businesses at this point, one-on-one for over a year with their social media, and utilizing it to actually get them sales and showing them what that process looks like. So there's a few secrets in this. There's 3 core secrets that I want you to take away from this. Hopefully you're taking notes. If not, pause this, go grab a notepad or however you take notes on your computer or whatever. I like to write things down by hand still, but one way or another, take notes. First point is you need to have a really strong sense of who you are talking to in order to know who you're going to show up as. So I'm going to give you guys a few different examples here. This is a business that we worked with, Freshline Moto Adventure Club. They do motorcycle trips around the world, which is pretty cool. But as cool as it is, they weren't getting any clients. They weren't getting any customers. And so they came to me and said, okay, what is it that we need to do in order to book more trips, get more guys on these international motorcycle trips, which are usually a few weeks long, and they can be costly. And they were interested in how to use social media to do that. So the first thing that we had to establish was exactly and precisely who they're going after. And I cannot understate the importance of this, or I should say, cannot overstate the importance of this. You need to have a very strong sense of who you're going after. If you do not, it's going to be extremely challenging to stand out to them on any platform, but that includes social media. So we said, all right, let's go form our imaginary friend, the guy that we want to go after. Now, in this case, because it was a motorcycle club, we put together a guy that would enjoy this type of trip. And the type of trips that these guys were doing, what they wanted to stand out for were trips that were extremely challenging in harsh terrain, harsh conditions, usually a younger group of guys, because there's quite a few tour companies out there that do high-end bikes, high-end BMWs, adventure bikes, but often it draws an older crowd that say they want to go on an adventure, but at the end of the day, they often spend a lot of time on the road and a lot of time in hotels, and that's not what these guys were about. They wanted to go out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Africa or Mongolia or I don't know, Guatemala or wherever, and not always necessarily have a hotel. Often they're camping out. They're using motorcycles they could find in these third world countries, which were not always the best bikes. So guys that were drawn to that kind of adventure. And establishing who this imaginary friend looked like, this is what we came up with, and this is what you should come up with, is very specific who that person is. So you can see here, first of all, we've named this person. We actually give them a name and we give them a face. We give them an actual, like, we have a picture for who this person is so we can visualize them. And the reason that that's super important is because you want to be able to communicate one-on-one with this person. I don't want you thinking when you're posting on social media or you're writing an email or you're putting things together on your website, if you think in your mind that you're going after a group of people, you need to shift that thinking and that mentality to say, No, it's actually just one type of person I'm going after, and you have their face in your mind, and they are the only person that you're trying to connect with online. Makes it much, much, much more effective in terms of getting any kind of response from an individual when they're like, this person gets me. So in this case, here's what we'll put down. We have some of his characteristics. So we have exactly how old he is. We have, he's married, he's got 2 kids, and then all these other things. If you want to see the level of detail, you can pause this and read it all out, but it's not going to matter because this is for this business. It's not going to help you. We also have here his challenges and frustrations, and that's also really important. And we could have gone into a lot more detail here even than we did, but it's really important to lay out what are the big roadblocks, because that's how this person is going to connect with you. You need to know their problems, and you don't need to communicate your solution. You don't need to communicate what you do at all in the early stages. The way that you're going to connect with an audience is actually by sharing that you understand their problem really better than they do. So when you can describe their problem better than they can, then you're going to start connecting with that individual. And it goes on. So from there, we actually also go into his values, his skills. You don't usually, for most clients, you don't need to know skills, but in this case, it is kind of important, because in this case, this club goes out into the middle of nowhere, and they want to know that the guys that they're bringing with them have a certain base level of skills in order to get themselves out of sticky situations, which they often find themselves in. So if there's anything that's really important to know about your client base outside of their values and maybe how they grew up, you might want to put that into a doc. And this is all in a Google Doc. This is where we keep this information. You can put it wherever you want, but that's where we have it. And then what we do is we take a look at the brands that Kurt identifies with. So we look at the brands he already loves. He's already buying, he's already purchasing. Because what does that mean? That means that these brands have gained his trust, his loyalty, enough for him to pull out his wallet and pay them. And if you're trying to gain a customer's trust enough for them to pull out their wallet and pay you, it helps to pay attention to other businesses, other companies that they are already doing that for. And we look at these are just screenshots. That's why it shows up a little bit rough here, but these are just screenshots. These are the brands that he identifies with. And then we take the unifying characteristics of those brands, and that helps us begin to form who it is that we want to show up as on social media. We say, oh, there's these unifying characteristics. All of these brands, for the most part, these are the patterns that show up in those brands. So obviously this is what, in this case, this is what Kurt, that's what he appreciates. That's what he really is going to want to look for when he's building trust with someone that he doesn't know. So we want to have that come through online. So we're going to revisit this as an example, but I'm going to show you an example from another business here. So now that we have a strong sense of who we're going after, so again, this Kurt guy, have a strong sense of who we're going after, what we want to do is we want to define who we want to show up as. So I'm going to switch businesses on you just to make it interesting, but we want to define who we want to show up as. So establishing our attractive character online. And the first question, of course, we have to answer is, who am I? Who am I going to show up as? So another business that was trying to figure this out, Cozy Cabins. So Cozy Cabins, small resort in BC, and they wanted to increase the amount of bookings they were getting online. In this case, we established their imaginary guest, and her name was Val. Very, very specific outline of who Val was. She was 38, had 2 kids, 8 and 12, and the list goes on. And then looking at her challenges as a mom in a family in Calgary, and her job as a nurse, and all of these things. And then we said, okay, who do we want to show up as? And we went through the whole thing. I kind of just showed you there with Kurt, but instead we did it for Cozy Cabins, of course. And what we want to do is we want to define a brand personality, and it doesn't have to be overly complicated, but we want to decide, how do we want to talk online? How do we want to show up like in conversation? And that's actually, I would say that's as important, if not more important, than the photos that you're posting. So in this case, that brand personality, we decided for Cozy Cabins we wanted to show up as direct, clean, and cheeky. And then we could have hints of these sub voices in there. We wanted to make sure that there's an underlying understanding that there's always honesty, using examples and parables, and being polarized, saying this is what we are here for, and if you're not with us, then we're not interested in taking you as a guest. So being okay with that. By the way, these three things really, really good to have no matter what business you're in, to have these as your an underlying um, foundation of how you operate. So let's take a look at what this actually looks like in their social media. So we went from little to no personality. Here's a post that's an example of this. Really, I think a pretty beautiful picture. This is actually a picture that was taken by an influencer, a photographer influencer that came to the resort, so professionally done. And it's not like it's a terrible caption, but here you can see playing peekaboo with the deer cabin, photo credit to the talented, and then this is, of course, the influencer here. And what I want you to pay attention to is the date, but then also the number of likes, the engagement on this post. We had, let's see, 2 comments here, and then we had 214 likes. Now, as much as this is 2017, I can promise you this stuff still works today. We've been doing it up until a couple of days ago, but July 10th is what I want you to look at here. Now we throw a little bit of personality in there, and I'll give you an example of what it means to throw personality in there. Here's a post from July 17th, 1 week later, and the photo, in my opinion, is not even as good a photo. This was a photo that was just taken on an iPhone, I think. Don't quote me on that. It's just a photo taken at the property. And now here's where we come across with more personality. First of all, very clear personality comes across as I statements. So instead of just being generic with playing peekaboo with the deer cabin, we don't actually know who's talking to us. We're not really sure who's talking to us here. It's kind of ambiguous. Whereas in this statement, there's an I. So it's like, oh, I'm having a conversation now with an individual. And that's what's really important. I'm having a conversation with an individual. Now, if you go to the brand personality, you'll see that direct, clean, and then cheeky. And this is basically a formula. So they get directly to the point of the photo. And in this case, it has to do with forest bathing. And then they have a cheeky statement that is the second half of this communication method. So basically talking about forest bathing, and then this I personality saying, I keep trying around here and it works amazing, but people give me funny looks and tell me I'm supposed to keep my clothes on for a forest bath. What do they know? So obviously there's a little bit of cheekiness here, but it comes from an individual, right? Now, right away, this is only a week after that other post that we saw. So just a reminder, we got 214 likes here, 2 comments here. And here you can see 8 comments and 508 likes, like more than double the amount of likes. And that has to do with the way that we're communicating there. So we have the likes and the comments, and then what happens if you continue this trend, if you continue this personality? Well, we've got 508 likes here, and then we go fast forward a little bit. So here we are not quite a month later, maybe 3 weeks later, still using this method, and it doesn't have to be long, but again, we're using those I statements, and we're being a little bit cheeky with it. And then you can see here we've got 10 comments this time, 789 likes, so the like count has gone up. And then here we move forward to Christmas, and they've kept this trend going. So just a little bit of cheeky comments, and then here the likes are shooting up, and the comments are, we've got 30 comments at this point. And you know that you're doing this right when you can see here, you get comments like this. I just love your sense of humor. It makes me want to stay at your beautiful cabins even more. So pretty there. People are connecting with this on social media. To give you a comparison, the follower count was going up as well. So I don't remember exactly where we started with these guys, but I think somewhere around, I believe it was 8,000 followers. Follower count's gone up dramatically as well. There were a few other things. We ran some contests and stuff with them, so that helped. Simple giveaway contests. Hey, a weekend away with us. You use whatever you've got. If you're cooking, for example, you can give away maybe a meal, or maybe even a meal for 3 days or a week or whatever it is. Like, you can do giveaways, and that's all they were doing here as well, just giveaways to gain followers. But you're not going to keep followers. You're not going to have them stick around unless you've got good photos, which we'll talk about how we get good photos in a second. And then also what's really important is that engaging personality. That is so, so key in order to have an audience that's actually interacting with you. You're not going to sell to an audience that's not listening. So you got to make sure that they're actually listening, they're interacting. So again, 21,000 followers here for Cozy Cabins. And to give you a comparison, this post got 1,400 likes and I think over 30 comments. And then by comparison, here's a post by Shell that has no idea what they're doing on social media. At the same time as this post, or same time frame, 213,000 likes. So 10 times the number of followers, I should say. And they've got less likes and less comments on this post. They literally have like 3 comments on this post. So there is a big difference in understanding what you're doing and how to communicate with your audience. Doesn't necessarily need to tie into the number of followers. Don't worry so much about that number, because you can see here it doesn't mean much in terms of getting your audience to engage and really enjoy what you're doing and look forward to your posts. So keep that in mind. So make sure you bring your personality to the table. Next, how do we know that our content's going to be engaging, that we're going to get them to stick around? Well, we need to take a look at what our audiences already are resonating with. So what we do is we find accounts that are out there, and this, a lot of what I'm giving you guys here is on Instagram. You can use this on any social media platform. If I was going to hack a social media platform, doesn't matter what platform it is, this is exactly how I would do it. I would go and find out which accounts are already crushing it, which accounts are already out there and doing really, really well with your audience, with that imaginary friend that you put together. And you go and you follow them. You figure out what they're posting. So we go and we follow them. Let's go back to the example of Kurt. You guys remember Kurt from the motorcycle club? So this guy. So what the motorcycle club decided to do was this is a little bit more complex, and I don't recommend this for most people, but they started posting things on their own business account. However, what we saw over time as well is that people wanted to resonate with an individual more than a business. So they created an individual personality, an individual account on Instagram. And in that case, they created an account called The Rugged Gentleman, which we'll get there in a second. But when it was time to determine, like, okay, what kind of content do we put on that account? What they did is they went out and they found accounts that Kurt would be interested in. So we know that Kurt, somewhere in here, he owns an old Land Cruiser. Owns an older Toyota that is his outlet for adventure. So he's pretty into his Land Cruiser. You might not know it, but when we found this picture, this is a Land Cruiser that he's sitting in. So we said, okay, he's into Land Cruisers. Let's go find accounts on Instagram that are Land Cruiser accounts, because he's probably watching them. So that's what we did. We were like, okay, let's go find old Land Cruisers. Here you can see an account, FJ Foreplay, obviously an old Land Cruiser account. We're looking for, I mean, it doesn't have a ton of followers here, but that's okay, because usually when the follower number is a little bit lower, often that means that, or it can mean that there's more engagement. I would rather check out an account where they've got lots of engagement on the posts at 9,000 followers than I would at an account that has, again, 200,000 followers, but no one's actually engaging with them. Again, because if no one's engaging with you, you're not going to sell them anything. You're not going to convince them to do business with you. So I'm looking for those accounts, often smaller accounts that have high levels of engagement. This happened to be one of them. And then what we would do is we'd go through that account and we would reverse engineer the winning pattern. So literally find the best accounts that you can in the world that have your audience, where your people are watching them. So in this case, I've done some of the work here for you. What I'll do is I like to do this on the computer, even though it's Instagram. On the computer, you can see it in this grid format. And then as you hover over the post, you'll be able to see likes and comments. So as I was hovering over the last posts, what you'll almost always see is there are going to be posts that are outliers that just tend to do a lot better than the posts that are around them. And the reason we're comparing to posts around them is because if I'm going through the entire feed, there's a good chance that these guys have gained followers over time. So I'm not going to compare the first post to the 100th post, because the 100th post, of course, is going to have a lot more likes and comments. I'm just comparing to the posts around it. Now, in this case, if I look at all these photos and I say, okay, which one kind of blew it up, which one did the best, Clearly here, if this is the number of likes and this is the number of comments, this post in the middle really did a lot better than the posts around it. Now the question is why? And there's no correct answers to this, but what we would literally do is just sit down with a sheet of paper, or I guess you could do this on a computer too, and we start making guesses as to what is in this post that is not in the others. It's almost like the freaking game on Sesame Street when you were a kid. One of these things is not like the others, and you're trying to guess. And there's no wrong answers on this. You're just trying to figure it out. So you're saying, oh, does this post do better because there's a river in it? Does this post do better because it's only half a vehicle? So you'd write down river. You'd write down half vehicle. You'd write down full front, like front shot. Maybe it does better because it's got a tree. So you put tree. And then what you do is you keep scrolling. You keep scrolling through this feed and you look for these other posts that are anomalies and you keep writing the patterns down. Now, where this starts to come out is when you find, let's say you find another post with a river, and you're like, oh, that posted really well and it has a river. Then what you do is, as opposed to writing river down again, you just put a tick next to the first river that you wrote down. If that's the case, then you start to figure out these patterns. You're like, oh, it seems like posts with rivers are doing really well. And then you take those patterns and you replicate them in your own account. Now, there's two ways of doing this. One, you can replicate that in the photos that you take for yourself. Two, you can literally go and take this photo, screenshot it, and then put it, boom. This is the account that the Freshline or the Motorcycle Club formed. You can go and you can post. You can see this. This is the last post. Boom, that's the last post on that feed. And you can totally do that as long as you give very obvious full credit to the photographer. And I can tell you what, the photographers are actually stoked to have you share their pictures because it gets them more of an audience. So as long as you're giving them credit, you're not going to get in trouble for that. If you're saying, no, I want to create all my own content, that's more than fair. And I think all of you, us included, you want to make sure that you're always shifting to your own content. But if you don't have it in the beginning, it's okay to use other people's content as long as you're giving them credit. And that's what makes this account interesting. So in looking at that Kurt guy and saying, okay, what are his interests? What is he into? We start figuring that out. We start looking for the patterns. And when we were establishing those patterns, it's ridiculous how specific it gets. One of those things was definitely rivers. So you can see in 3 of these shots, there's a river in the background. There's river, river, river. This Kurt guy loves rivers. Other things he loves old rebuilt motorcycles. Other things he loves old Land Rover Defenders. And then it gets super specific. He likes Land Rover Defender 110s, but he does not like Land Rover Discoveries. We posted Land Rover Discovery, absolutely failed on that post, okay? Well, it's a bit of trial and error. He loves fishing, he loves cabins, he loves horses, he loves float planes. Guess what? Does he love any kind of float plane? Nope. We found out he loves yellow float planes a lot more than anything else. Why? I don't know. He probably doesn't even know. It's probably a subconscious thing. But we find these patterns when we start to find these accounts that he's following, and we actually look at what posts are doing really, really well. We reverse engineer, and then we can take these, and like I said, you can take it and just screenshot it, post it to your own account, give photo credit, or you try and recreate this. Like we were doing this for a home renovation firm, and they would just recreate it in some of the renovations they were doing. Or we did this for a nail salon. Pretty easy for them to just recreate the posts that were doing really, really well in their own salon. So they'd recreate the style and they take a photo of it, and then it is 100% their own work. So absolutely, that's what you should be trending toward. But this is what makes your account attractive visually, which is great. You want to make sure it's attractive visually, but then you have to make sure that you've got a message that the account portrays that the audience is not going to get somewhere else. You have to have your own unique message. Now, in this case, for this account, if we're going after Kurt, the formula that was put together here, unlike Cozy Cabins, like Cozy Cabins was that cheeky, clean plus cheeky formula. In this case, this formula was the philosophical adventurer. So there's no humor in this. There's no humor in this account, but it can still be very attractive to this audience because this is what they're looking for. They have an adventurous spirit, and they're also apparently philosophical. They're thinking deeper about things, and so that's what they're attracted to. And there's plenty of engagement on these posts. again, like 31 comments on the post, if you're getting tons of comments, that implies that you're getting great engagement on those posts. So um, it doesn't have to be funny. It can be whatever connects with that audience, and that you'll find that over time, especially as you're reverse engineering, and then also again defining who you're going after. In part, it really clarifies who you want to be. And then the third part of this is once you've got an account that has really attractive photos and you've got an account that's got an attractive personality and it keeps people there and they're engaging with you, then as long as people are engaging with them, you can sell them a new opportunity. So here's an example for a shop that we worked with, Moto Shop, and they were doing obviously repairs, but they also do fabrication stuff. You probably probably don't care. Point is that they were wanting to sell things through their social media channels, and they weren't quite sure what that looked like, how to do that. And so what we do now, if you're operating in a specific city, which if you're listening to this, you're often going to be operating within a certain geographical region. You go out and you find the best accounts in the world and find out what works for them. But then what you do in order to get followers is you figure out where are your people in your city, the kind of people that you want to purchase from you, where are they hanging out? So now in this case, for this shop, I asked them, okay, obviously you guys do a lot of different things. Are there any makes or models of cars that you specialize in? And they said, yeah, like, I mean, we can do a number of things, but we're really good at working on Nissans. So, or, sorry, Lexus. Is that right? I think so. Lexuses. So I said, okay, this shop's based in Calgary. Now go to Lexus of Calgary. And here it's got a small follower count. That's a really good sign. That means that these guys probably haven't gone out and paid for followers. It means that these are probably organic followers for this account in the city. So great. This shop works on Lexuses. They go to Lexus of Calgary. And then what they do is you go to the followers, you click on them, and then you hit follow. So you'll click this because it puts you on their radar. A lot of people are private. I still will hit follow just to put you on their radar. If they're not private and you can actually see their account, what you do here, and this, I'm not going to lie, this takes time, but it also, if you want to make money online, if you want to get purchases online, this is the way that you start. Later on, you can hire people to do this, but I always say for the first 1,000 followers that you're putting together, you put in the work yourself, because that will be your most loyal customer base for years moving forward that actually are going to engage with your posts. So for the first 1,000 followers, do this yourself. I used to do this at night. Like when I went to bed, I would go and I'd pick one or two people. It wasn't taking forever. Like I would take like a couple of minutes, one or two people from accounts that were accounts that had the followers I wanted, and I would go. Again, I'd hit follow, but I click on this. Let's say Chris here at the top. Takes me this guy. This guy's obviously in love with his freaking Lexus. Probably just got lucky with this one, but you go to Chris, you go to this post, and you go, and in this case, the shop would post, hey man, that's a beautiful car. Have you seen what turbos can do on the 3.5 liter Next Level Motors? Now this guy, of course, is going to be like, oh, Next Level Motors clearly knows something about my car. He's going to go and he's going to check them out. So it's not just a follow, it's a post that could not be a bot. You have to make sure that's so specific that it's like there's no way any bot's going to write this. Obviously, a person wrote this. It has to be clear that you put the time and attention into the comment. And more likely than not, they might say something back. They might reply to the comment. Very, very typical that they're at least going to follow you back. And in this case, boom, one more follow for Next Level Motors. So Chris now loves them. And now I'm not going to guarantee you, of course, that every person is going to buy from you, but within a couple of weeks of starting this method, we got this email from Next Level Motors that basically said, and they had virtually no social media to begin with, but basically said, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but what this really entails is they just had their ideal client walk in the door, order a ton of parts, and then Here he says, basically, we had a carbon copy of our imaginary friend avatar come to us through Instagram. We were doing a ton of work for him, and he couldn't be more pleased. We have a feeling it's just the first of many to come. Um, what they also said that's not in the email is that when that guy came in, he worked up north, and he's like, "Hey, can I get a stack of business cards? I'm going to hand them out to all my friends." So yeah, absolutely, you can get your perfect person through social media, and they can come and buy from you. But that's not the only method, and it shouldn't be the only method. The last thing that we want to do is we want to be strategic with actually selling stuff online too. Um, so we'll put offers out. So the way that we do this is when we start building that following that we want. If it's like, this is our customers, we start engaging with them, commenting, and these are the people that we actually want, that are qualified to purchase with us. We have conversations with them on social media. Instagram is great for that. We ask them what they hate, we ask them what they want, and we do that through posts, and we do that tons through stories. But in this case, here's a post for, again, the Motorcycle Club. This is just a post on Instagram. If you could ride anywhere in the world, where would you go? And then all we're doing, because we're engaged, we're getting tons of comments. And so we rack up, oh, where do these guys want to go? Of course, you're getting places from all over the world, but we say, what's the general consensus? Where do most people that are following us, where do most people want to ride? And going through all of these comments, it came out that South America showed up at just a ton in the comments. So guess what? What becomes the very next post that we put out there? Now accepting applications for Peru. Because it doesn't matter where these guys go. We're just saying, hey, this is what the audience is asking for. Let's put together this trip. And so you put together applications for this trip. This was for 2019. I can tell you that this trip totally sold out pretty quick. But this is how you do it. Now, it's not just one post, and I want to be really clear about that as well. So the last thing I want you to kind of walk away with here when it comes to how you promote this is typically we'll do a series of 10 posts. So be very clear about the person that you wanting to do business with. So this was the initial post, although I think this is from a different, this is for Guatemala prior to that. But for the initial post, be very clear about who you want. And then we do 10 posts after that. And another thing here, because we're going after guys, this is like, it's obviously written really rough, because that is kind of the style of the guy that's going. You'll emulate the style that you want to have come across, your own personality style and the style that your audience resonates with. If you're going after high-end clients, you probably wouldn't do it this way. You would do it with something more eloquent. But you would do 10 posts. So giving 10 reasons. So here are versions of these 10 posts that put out for the club. And they say in the post as well, specifically, there's a deadline to apply, and that's really good too, to have applications and have a deadline for applications, because having a deadline just really gives people a kick up the butt to, or kick in the butt to just make a decision. That's all it is just get them to make a decision. And we run down that timeline, and we're very specific about how to get it. So always it would say, click the link in our bio for that application form. And then what happens? Well, you get this. You get forms coming in batches. In this case, super simple. Google Forms. Didn't pay anything to put this all together. By the way, I should state that this whole thing, like with Freshline, these guys have not paid at all for any marketing, any advertising. And they're making, like, this is working really, really well for them, just using social media. So the forms come in, and you can see here on the back end, like, for instance, 105 responses for this application, for a trip application. Then they filter through all of those. They can only take, I think, 8 or 10. And that allows them to be picky with who they actually want as clients, which is pretty awesome. And then they can take those individuals on those trips, which means that they're making money with it as well. So the really cool part about all of this, through all those steps, guys, if you made it to this far, give yourself a pat on the back. Well done. If you do all this stuff right, you'll start a movement. And often what I'll do is, if I'm doing this in person, I'll show you kind of the 3 core points that you need to start a movement. But the 3 core points you need to start a movement are: you need that attractive character. So you need somebody that is an individual. You don't even have to show your face. Actually, I think all of those accounts that I showed you, not one of them did anybody show their face, but they all use that I statement. They use that to communicate. So that first point of starting a movement is you have to be clear about who you are and the personality you have that you come across with. The second point of starting a movement is you need to be very clear with your message. And that comes through in how are we going to communicate to our people? What's our message? A lot of times too, and I didn't really touch on this much, but it's really great if you have a cause or a vision for the future that you're communicating. That is often a great message to portray. And then the third point that you want to have in order for a movement to go anywhere is you want to have a new opportunity for them. You want to say, hey, this is what I'm providing for you. This is where you can start the steps down this path to this vision that we have, or to this message that we're portraying. You want to have that new opportunity. I'm not going to go tons into the movement, but this plays into it in social media. So, oh yeah, those 3 elements. Here's another business that we worked with, Free Spirit Dogs. And here's an example of how they're communicating in their messaging. Oops. In their messaging, this is an example of how they're communicating their movement. They are an agility dog training clinic, but in order to portray their new opportunity, they say, we're not dog trainers. This isn't dog training. This is inspired human training for smart dogs. It's a whole new way to live life with your dog. This is the movement and inspiration, blah, blah, blah. And they go on the movement thing, which is really powerful. And I think they did an amazing job at it. And then here's a post from that same, like from Hannah, who runs Free Spirit Dogs. She has this whole post about using the movement that we taught her and using that through her social media. And then here, let's take a look at the PS. We also filled up 3 classes, 18 spots in 7 minutes on Thursday when we opened registration to our most recent applicants. Absolutely crushing it because of the messaging that's coming across. So once again, social media, don't think it's just a visual platform. It very much depends on the message, on how you're being social on that platform, how you're communicating. And these are all the references that people are giving to these guys since they've started using this concept on social media. Again, just a testimonial here with what that all looks like. And then these are just a few other testimonials. I don't need to go into this with you guys. I mean, if you want to pause it and read them, great. But that's not the point of this. Just a few other testimonials for people using social media, using this exact method I just showed you to make big, big wins in their business. Okay, that's it. That's what I've got for you as far as social media is concerned. Take this stuff, take this stuff, go and use it. Go form your personality, figure out who you are. So again, secret 1, you need to know who you're going after in order to know who you're showing up as. So figure out who you're going after and who you want to come across as your personality. Secret 2, hack those patterns to create your own message. So go out, find out who's the best in the world that is already engaging with your audience, and just reverse engineer what's working for them. And then secret 3, sell people that new opportunity. Sell them something that they haven't seen before with your own unique flair on it. So they get excited about it. All right, go do those 3 things and you will crush.